Imagine you're standing in the back of this really cramped, dimly lit underground club.
Oh, I can picture it. Sweaty walls, shoulder to shoulder.
Exactly. The lights go down and the crowd gets quiet, anticipating the first act. And instead of a guitarist walking onto the stage to plug into an amp, someone drives a live, diesel-chugging bulldozer straight through the back wall of the venue.
Which is just, I mean, it's pure insanity.
Right. Plaster is falling everywhere, metal is shrieking, the smell of exhaust is just filling the room, and the audience is literally scrambling for their lives. And, well, that is exactly where our story begins today.
It's the ultimate statement of just clearing the board.
Yeah.
Tearing down the physical walls to build an entirely new universe of sound.
So true. And welcome to today's deep dive. I'm so thrilled you're joining us because the material we are pulling from today is not just some standard music biography.
Not even close.
No, we are looking at this brilliant retrospective column that was published in December 2025 by the music site MMR, which is Monumental Movement Records. And our mission today is to map the incredibly bizarre, mind-bending journey of the Japanese musical collective known as Boredoms.
Yeah, and it really is a journey.
It is. We are going to look at how a group of artists goes from absolute venue-destroying, bulldozer-wielding chaos to orchestrating these mathematically precise spiritual meditations with, 77 drummers in perfect sync.
Which is a massive leap.
A completely massive pendulum swing. And more importantly, we want to look at what that swing teaches you and me about pushing the boundaries of whatever medium we happen to work in.
Because the source material maps this out so brilliantly. It shows a collective that didn't just, change genres over a few decades.
Right.
They repeatedly changed the fundamental definition of what art, sound, and collaboration could even be.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the beginning, which drops us right into 1980s Osaka. And the MMR column points out a really crucial geographical detail here.
Yeah, the location is everything.
Exactly, because Osaka had a completely different vibe from Tokyo. Tokyo was the polished center of the music industry. But Osaka had this incredibly messy, wildly unique underground scene.
Oh, absolutely.
You had abandoned buildings, tiny theaters, and live houses where the boundaries between punk, hardcore, noise, and performance art were just completely obliterated.
Well, geography and local culture always dictate the constraints of art. In Osaka, because they lacked that rigid commercial industry structure you'd find in a major hub like Tokyo.
They didn't have the suits telling them what to do.
Exactly. There was no pressure to create a marketable product, so it became this fertile ground for pure cross-pollination. You had kids who didn't even know how to play instruments hanging out with avant-garde theater directors.
And right in the epicenter of that collision is our core protagonist, Yamantaka Eye. But Eye doesn't start his career trying to write pop songs or, learning 3 chords on an acoustic guitar.
Yo, definitely not.
He starts with what the source calls concrete art, collage, and this highly destructive performance art, which leads to his pre-Boredoms project, Hanatarash. And I want to pause on this term concrete art for a second, because I'm trying to picture this. Is he literally pouring cement on a stage?
Oh, wow. No, that is a very common misconception, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Concrete art in this specific context refers to music concrete. It's a compositional technique where instead of using traditional acoustic instruments like pianos or violins, you use raw, recorded sounds from the environment.
Wait, so like ambient street noise?
Exactly. You might record the screech of a subway train or a jackhammer or, a glass shattering, and then you manipulate those recordings. You speed them up, slow them down, splice them together.
Okay, so you're treating raw noise as your actual instrument, and Hanatarash took that to the absolute extreme, like we mentioned the bulldozer earlier, and that wasn't a metaphor, that was a real event.
A very real, very terrifying event.
They literally brought heavy machinery into a live house. The performances were flagged for extreme physical danger to the audience. And I gotta push back on this a little bit, though.
Sure.
Because when I read about this era, I really struggle to see the artistic merit. Like, is this even music at this point, or is it just a dangerous, destructive stunt?
That's a fair question.
It just feels a bit like a toddler who just wants to smash their toys against the wall purely to see how they break. Where is the art in driving a bulldozer into a room?
Well, what's fascinating here is that your toddler metaphor actually hits on a deep psychological truth about creativity.
Oh, yeah. How so?
We tend to view destruction as the opposite of creation, but the source describes this specific era as Eye's pre-music phase. For him, at that moment, The goal wasn't to arrange notes or chords. It was about raw, unfiltered expression.
Just getting it all out.
Right. If you want to build something that has literally never existed before, playing by the established rules of a four-piece rock band just won't get you there. The overwhelming, violent impulse of Hanatarash was necessary to just clear the slate.
I see. It's like a controlled burn in a forest. You have to incinerate all the dead wood so a completely new ecosystem can actually grow in the ashes.
That is the exact mechanism at play, and that new growth happens when Boredoms officially forms around 1986. Eye teams up with early members like Mitsuru Tabata, Toyohiro Yoshikawa, and H.I. Ray.
And they bring that energy with them.
Yes, they take that terrifying, dangerous violence of Hanatarash, but instead of letting it run totally wild, they synthesize it. They forge it into what the column calls controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos. I like that. So the bulldozers are gone, but the intensity is still there. They start blending the blistering breakneck speed of hardcore punk with just pure screeching noise.
And totally unpredictable song structures.
Exactly. They throw in entirely fragmented beats, but the mechanism that I find most compelling in their early sound is their use of sudden silences.
Oh, that was genius.
It's crazy. They would be playing at 1,000 miles an hour, creating this massive wall of distortion, and then just completely stop. A hard cut to dead silence.
Because acoustic contrast is an incredibly powerful tool. If you play at maximum volume for 20 minutes straight, the human ear eventually acclimates to it. It just becomes this background drone.
I just tune it out.
Right. But when you introduce a sudden, razor-sharp moment of silence, the brain completely resets. It makes the noise that follows feel twice as loud and twice as violent.
So they were taking that chaotic, toy-smashing impulse I mentioned earlier and applying an actual architecture to it. It became this highly technical discipline of stopping and starting on a dime.
Exactly. And that architecture really caught people's ears. The retrospective notes that by 1988, their albums were making their way to the overseas indie scene.
Yeah, the word was getting out. And by 1989, Sonic Youth, who were massive tastemakers at the time, began heavily championing Boredoms. And that connection acted like a giant cable, plugging this weird Osaka collective directly into the massive U.S. underground network.
It was huge for them.
Suddenly, they are on the global radar.
And that global attention proves how universal that raw, cathartic energy can really be. However, as the article astutely points out, pure destruction has a shelf life.
It gets old.
It does. If your only tool is a hammer, eventually everything in the room is just dust and you have literally nothing left to do. So to keep evolving, Boredoms had to solve a massive creative problem. How do you build a sustainable structure entirely out of noise?
Which brings us perfectly into the 1990s, and here's where it gets really interesting, because their sound drastically morphs. The MMR column highlights two pivotal albums from this era, the 1998 album Super Eye and their 1999 masterpiece, Vision Creation Newsun.
Two absolute landmark records.
Incredible records. And I'm looking at the descriptions of this era, and it meets the introduction of natural sounds, tribal percussion, and these long guitar drones.
It's a huge shift.
It is. The source states that Eye's perspective shifted from a destructive impulse to cosmic expansion, but I'm really struggling to wrap my head around the physics of this transition.
How so?
Well, noise is inherently chaotic and abrasive. It hurts. Cosmic music requires space and peace. So how did they bridge that gap without the music just turning into a muddy, unlistenable mess? Isn't cosmic hardcore noise just an absolute oxymoron?
It absolutely sounds like a contradiction until you look at the secret weapon of their evolution during the 90s.
Yeah.
And that weapon was Yoshimi Pee-wee.
Ah, yes. She takes on a central role during this era.
She does. Yoshimi handled drums, vocals, and electronics. And what she brought to the collective was a profound, almost relentless focus on repetition and minimal rhythms.
Okay, so she grounds them.
Exactly. If Yamantaka Eye was the spark of unpredictable, erratic chaos, Yoshimi provided a massive, immovable, rhythmic anchor.
So she is providing the heavy skeleton that all this wild noise can actually hang on to, but how does that create a cosmic feeling?
Think about staring at a ceiling fan. When it's spinning slowly, your brain registers a series of choppy, individual blades hitting the air. That's their early punk phase. Choppy, aggressive, fragmented. Yeah. But if you turn that fan up to its absolute maximum speed, the individual blades disappear.
Oh, wow.
It blurs into a single, transparent, sustained circle. That is what Boredoms achieved acoustically. They learned to bounce between sudden destructive elements and deep structural repetition.
That makes perfect sense.
When you layer a massive wall of abrasive noise over a relentless, hypnotic, krautrock-style drum beat that does not change for 10 minutes, it stops feeling like an attack.
It induces a trance state. The repetition acts as an anchor for the brain, allowing you to safely float inside the noise instead of just being battered by it. The music transformed into what the source beautifully describes as a vortex of light.
A vortex of light is the perfect visual, and think about how that applies to you, the listener, in your own daily life. We all experience moments where we are completely overwhelmed by chaotic information, a massive workload, or just a barrage of competing ideas.
All the time.
The natural human instinct is usually to fight the chaos or try to run away from it. But Boredoms teaches us a different mechanical approach. Introduce a simple repeating rhythm right into the center of the storm.
Just find a pulse.
Right. Introducing a steady structure to chaos doesn't kill the energy, it actually harnesses it. It focuses that overwhelming noise into something transcendent and usable.
If you can find the groove in the noise, you can ride the wave instead of being crushed by it. That is a brilliant takeaway. But once rhythm and repetition became their primary language, the traditional setup of a singer, a guitarist, a bassist, and a drummer simply didn't work anymore.
No, the campaigner had to change to fit the new substance. They could no longer operate as a traditional rock band.
Which is the perfect transition into their next era. Moving into the 2000s and 2010s, the entire physical architecture of Boredoms is dismantled. They strip away the guitars and bass almost entirely.
Just gone.
Yeah. The core structure is reduced to a mathematical equation drum multiplied by percussion. That's it. They even changed the stylistic spelling of their name, writing it as Boredoms, but using an infinity symbol instead of the double O.
And that infinity symbol carries heavy philosophical weight. They were signaling to the world and to themselves that they were no longer a fixed band with a set lineup playing a set list of songs.
They were something else.
Yeah, they had evolved into a collective creative body with a completely fluid membership.
And the music totally reflects that fluid expansiveness. The column breaks down their 2004 release, Seadrum House of Sun. This record is wild. It blends field recordings of beaches, continuous drones, and ambient noise to create what the source calls a ritual of sound.
It really is a ritual.
But I want to dig into how this was actually made, because the source mentions Eye's habit of tactile editing from the 90s. It says he used to physically splice cassette tapes and manipulate turntable sounds. How does cutting up a cassette tape with a razor blade translate to leading a collective of percussionists?
Well, it comes down to how you conceptualize time and sound. When you are literally holding a piece of magnetic tape in your hands, culling it, and taping it to another piece, you are treating sound as a physical, touchable object.
You can literally hold the music.
Exactly. You are mapping musical time to physical inches of tape. So by the time we reach the 2000s, Eye translates that highly physical relationship with sound into a physical approach to rhythm. He stops being a vocalist hiding behind a microphone.
He steps out.
He steps out and becomes a physical conductor of rhythm, using his entire body to cue different drummers, shaping the sound in real time as if you were molding clay.
And if you are going to be a physical conductor of rhythm, you need a massive orchestra to conduct. Which brings us to the most staggering logistical feat of their career, the Boredom era.
So this is legendary.
We have to talk about the 77 Boredom event, July 7th, 2007, New York City, Brooklyn Bridge Park, 77 drum kits, all playing together at the exact same time.
Which is, the sheer logistics of moving 77 drum kits into a park is mind-boggling, let alone the acoustic challenges of making them actually sound good together.
Right, because 77 drum kits playing at once sounds like it should be an absolute sonic nightmare. How does that not just turn into a wall of muddy, indistinguishable, headache-inducing noise?
The secret lies in polyrhythms and spatial arrangement.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. A polyrhythm is when you have contrasting rhythms playing simultaneously. Imagine one group of drummers playing a steady 3-beat pulse, while another group plays a 4-beat pulse over the top of it.
So they don't perfectly align.
Exactly. They weave in and out of each other, creating this complex rolling groove. Now multiply that mathematical precision across 77 players. To keep it from sounding muddy, you have to arrange them spatially.
And the source describes this massive circular 360-degree stage layout. The drummers were actually set up in a giant spiral.
Yes, a literal spiral.
And standing dead center in the middle of that spiral is Yamantaka Eye, acting as the conductor for these massive, multi-layered waves of sound. It's like a human centrifuge. Or a sonic solar system, with Eye acting as the sun and the drummers orbiting him in precise mathematical layers.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights an incredible arc of leadership and personal evolution for Yamantaka Eye. Think about where this man started.
Driving a bulldozer.
He was the ultimate individual disruptor, driving a bulldozer through a wall to shatter the room. Decades later, he is standing in the center of a park, acting as a facilitator, unifying 77 individuals into a single, massive, sustained wave of communal euphoria.
Wow.
He moved from individualistic destruction to orchestrating ultimate communal creation.
That is a masterclass in the evolution of a leader, moving from the guy who breaks things to the guy who connects people. But the source makes it clear that this wasn't just the Yamantaka Eye show. Yoshimi was doing equally groundbreaking work during this time with her parallel project called OOIOO.
Oh, yeah. OIOO is essential to understanding how Boredoms achieved that massive communal sound.
It's an all-female ensemble, Yoshimi started, fusing multi-layered tribal percussion with ambient environmental sounds. And a column highlights their investment in environmental sound research.
Which was so ahead of its time.
They weren't just playing in standard studios, they were figuring out how rhythm interacts with open spaces, nature, and architecture. And the brilliant part is that the discoveries made in OOIO fed directly back into Boredoms.
Well, because Boredoms had embraced that infinity symbol, because they were a fluid, expanding entity, the boundary between projects was entirely porous.
There were no walls anymore.
Exactly. There was no rigid ego saying, that's an OIO idea, we can't use it here. They were operating like a research and development lab. Yoshimi would go out to the edges of rhythmic experimentation, figure out how to make environmental polyrhythms work, and bring that technology back to the central collective.
Which perfectly explains how the source ultimately defines them at the end of the retrospective. The MMR column concludes that by the 2010s and 2020s, Boredoms is not actually a band at all.
Not even a little bit.
No. The text describes them as an expanding universe. It calls them a vortex without a center that simply changes shape over time, coming together for these intermittent, massive, live rituals before dispersing again.
They transitioned from being a product meant to be consumed into a space of pure possibility.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out and look at this entire chaotic, beautiful timeline from the bulldozer in Osaka to the 77 drummers in New York? What is the ultimate takeaway for the listener navigating their own creative or professional life today?
I think this deep dive provides a crucial lesson in not letting a format dictate your expression. We all get trapped by the invisible containers in our lives.
Oh, definitely.
A musician assumes they have to write a 3-minute pop song. A business leader assumes a new strategy must fit into a standard 20-slide deck. A writer thinks they have to follow a traditional 3-act structure.
We just accept the rules.
Right. What Boredoms proves is that true, lasting innovation requires the courage to completely destroy your past work to build your future. They refused to let the container dictate what was inside. If the container didn't fit the idea they were trying to express, they smashed the container. They allowed themselves the grace to be a fluid, constantly evolving entity.
They literally brought heavy machinery to the container, smashed it to pieces, and built a cosmic meditation circle out of the rubble. It is a brilliant reminder to question the default structures we accept every single day. Keep searching for your groove in the noise. Don't be afraid to clear the room to build something new, and we will see you next time.
But wait, this raises an important question to leave you with today.
Oh, true.
The source highlights how Boredoms achieved a profound 360-degree bodily experience through the physical vibration of live acoustic drum circles. Today, our culture is utterly obsessed with achieving immersion.
Oh, sure. The tech industry loves that word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we try to do it by strapping heavy VR headsets to our faces, staring at high-definition screens, and relying on digital spatial audio algorithms to trick our brains.
Right.
But perhaps the most profound way to alter human consciousness isn't through a screen or a microchip. Maybe it's through the raw, physical, communal vibration of dozens of human beings hitting drums together in perfect, chaotic sync. It really makes you wonder what other primitive technologies hold the true key to the future of human experience.